Agut Moyed, the Sikha we're going to be learning this week is a Sikha of the Rebbe of Shabbos Parshas Bereshis, Tafshinun Beis. It can be found in Sefer HaSichas Tafshinun Beis, Chelik Aleph, page 43. So the Rebbe starts off by saying it's known the Pizgom of Rabbi Seinu Nisienu, famous Pizgom of our Rabbeim, that Azoivim Mishtelzach Shabbos Bereshis, how we set ourselves up on Shabbos Bereshis, Azoy Geit Agans Yor, that's the way it's going to go for the whole year. In other words, the Anhag of Shabbos Bereshis is Noigeya and is Poyel. It has an effect on the whole year. What is specifically so special about Shabbos Bereshis? The dafka from this Shabbos we take for the whole year. L'cha'oira, one could ask, the Teuchen, the whole idea of the whole Chodesh Tishrei. Tishrei we know is the same letters as the word Reshis, which is the beginning or the head. So it's the beginning and the head of the whole year. As it's known that the Yomim Tovim of the whole year, and Tishrei we know has lots of Yomim Tovim, our general Yomim Tovim, from which we take the koiches for our avodah for the whole year. Starting with Rosh Hashanah, it's called Rosh Hashanah because it is the head that includes inside of itself and leads all the days of the year. In a similar way, Yom Kippur, which in a pasuk is actually also referred to as Rosh Hashanah, and so to Chag HaSukkos, which is called Zman Simchoseinu, and then going all the way to Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. So they're all very, very special and great Yomim Tovim that give us koiches for the whole year. If that's the case, why is it that we specifically point out Shabbos Bereshis, that it is the one that has the effect on the whole year? The point of the explanation of this is simply that Shabbos Bereshis is sort of making that marker going over from Chodesh Tishrei that has so many Yomim Tovim, going over into the normal, ordinary, everyday life of the rest of the year. And the Rebbe explains how that is. So first of all, the Rebbe says Shabbos Bereshis is the end of Chodesh Tishrei. It's the culmination of Chodesh Tishrei. It's the last Shabbos of the month. Shabbos, we know, is the Vayechulu. It's the day that elevates, culminates all of the days in the previous week. And in this case, because the previous week before Shabbos Bereshis, we have Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, which Chassidus explains that Shmini Atzeres is the word Atzeres actually means absorbing. So it absorbs and takes all of the inyanim of Chodesh Tishrei, finally come and are absorbed within Shmini Atzeres. And then this Shabbos is the Vayechulu, the culmination of the week that had Shmini Atzeres. So we can understand why Shabbos Bereshis is such an important Shabbos. That's point number one. Point number two, this is going into the regular, usual, common avodah for the coming year. Why is that? Because it is Shabbos Mavorchim of Chodesh Mar Cheshvan. So this is sort of the weekday or regular, ordinary month, the first ordinary month of the coming year, a month that doesn't have any Yomim Tovim, when this is the time when the main avodah starts of what it's known V'Yaakov Holach L'Darkoi. What does L'Darkoi mean? In other words, Yaakov going into his regular, ordinary avodah in matters of the world, uvden dechoil, mundane things, as the expression ish tachas gafnoi, ish tachas teinase, each person under his grapevine and under his fig tree. So since Shabbos Bereshis includes inside of itself these two inyanim, again, first of all, the last Shabbos of the whole month of Tishrei, as well as going into benching, giving the koyach for the first ordinary week, month of the whole year. That's why we say Shabbos Bereshis is the one that gives a special koyach for the conduct of the whole year. And the Rebbe explains, the Yomim Tovim of Chodesh Tishrei itself, since they are still within the Darga of Reshis, within the Darga of Tishrei, which we said is the letters of Reshis, they are still within the Darga of the head, so to speak. So in a sense, they are still removed from the rest of the months of the year, because it's a time that's filled with mitzvahs, filled with kedusha. To use the words of the Medrash about Chodesh HaShvi'i, the Medrash says Shvi'i is also from the word musba. It is satiated, it is filled with all good things. It's the time when there's lots of fruit and brachas and kapara, all good things. And b'meila, just based on the anhaga and the conduct of Chodesh Tishrei, we're not so sure yet what's going to happen. How are you going to take? Are you going to be able to take this elevated state of Chodesh Tishrei into the ordinary days of the year? Whereas Shabbos Bereshis, since it is both things, on the one hand the end of Chodesh Tishrei, as well as the beginning of the ordinary, weekday, mundane avodah of the rest of the year, starting with Shabbos Mavorchim of Chodesh Cheshvan. So that's why this has a special quality that we said that how you set yourself up on Shabbos Bereshis, this is the way it's going to go the rest of the year. The Rebbe says, this is also hinted in the word Bereshis. We call it Shabbos Bereshis. Bereshis, of course, means also the beginning. In other words, this is the beginning of the head for the rest of the year. In addition to the fact that Parshas Bereshis is also the first parsha in the Torah, is the beginning of the kriyos of all the parshas of the Torah, with which we are going to have to live for all the weeks of the year. In addition to this, we're saying Bereshis is also like the beginning of the year. And therefore, Parshas Bereshis is what we call the Mamutza HaMachaber, the intermediary that connects, that gives a special koyach, that the way you set yourself up on this Shabbos, this is the way it's going to continue, this is the way it's going to go for the rest of the year. We're going to be able to take the great elevated state of Chodesh Tishrei and take it into our daily avodah for the rest of the year in the regular weekdays and in our mundane activities. Says the Rebbe, this is also understood from the toichen, from the content of Parshas Bereshis. That's why it's called Shabbos Bereshis, because of Parsha Bereshis. What do we speak about in Parshas Bereshis? We speak about Maaseh Bereshis, the way the Eibishter created the world. That is, by reading in the Torah the pasuk of Bereshis, Bereshis bara Elikim eis hashamayim ve'eis haaretz. By this itself, this is giving the renewal for all matters of the world for the coming year, because we know that the Eibishter looks into the Torah and creates the world. In a similar way, a Yid looks into the Torah, learns the Torah, and gives the world its existence. So by learning these inyanim in Torah, this is giving the koiches into the world, and therefore this gives the koiches that the way you're going to set yourself up on Shabbos Bereshis, you'll be able to continue throughout the rest of the year. The Rebbe says we're going to understand this even better by looking at the words of Chazal on the word Bereshis itself. Now the pasuk doesn't say Mikedem Bara Elikim, that at the beginning, or Metchila. The word is specifically Bereshis. Why Bereshis? Chazal, of course, tell us that Bereshis stands for Beis Reshis, for two other things that are called Reshis. That's why the world was created. For the Torah that's called Reshis, as an Apostle Reshis Darkoi, and for the Yidden that are called Reshis, as an Apostle Reshis Tvuosoi. Since the Chazal darshan is on the word Bereshis, which is simply referring to the creation of the heaven and earth and everything inside of it, as the Psukim go on to say, therefore it makes sense, and especially based on what it's known, that generally when you have a few Pirushim in the same word, there's always a connection between the different Pirushim, and the Rebbe brings a famous proof for this from the word Shatnez. The word Shatnez itself is made up of a few different words, Shoya, Tovi, Venuz, and from these words we learn exactly what Shatnez is, but the idea is that from a few different parts of the word Shatnez and a few different Pirushim in the idea of Shatnez, we put them all together to make one halacha of what Shatnez is. In a similar way, the Rebbe always uses this idea to prove that whenever we have a few different aspects in a pasuk and a few different Pirushim in a pasuk, they're always connected. So therefore, back to the word Bereshis itself. The simple word of Bereshis refers to the creation of the world. Chazal tell us Bereshis is referring to the Yidden and Torah. So it's not that one Pirush is coming to negate the other, rather it's coming to add another point, that in addition to Bereshis meaning the beginning of the world, it also of course refers to the Yidden and the Torah. But if that's the case, the Rebbe says we need to understand the connection between the Pirush of Chazal and the simple Pshat. Why do we need to understand the connection? Because it seems to be that not only are they different to each other, but it seems to be that they're at the opposite ends of the spectrum, the two extremes. According to the Drash of Chazal, Bereshis itself is referring not to the world, but rather to Torah and Yisrael. Bereshis is the two things that are called Reshis, Torah and the Yidden. And the Torah and the Yidden are preceding the creation, and completely higher than creation, as opposed to the word Bereshis in the simple sense of the word, which of course refers to the creation. So how do we understand these two ideas of Bereshis coming together? On the one hand, Torah and Yidden, which are completely beyond creation. On the other hand, Bereshis referring to the simple creation of the world. This question becomes even stronger based on what Rashi says on the pasuk. Rashi brings the two Pirushim, and this is what Rashi says. Ein ha-mikra hazeh Oimer elo darshuni. This pasuk of Bereshis bara is demanding a drasha. It's demanding some sort of explanation. The Razal tell us, what does Bereshis mean for the Torah and for the Yidden? That's the first thing Rashi tells us. Then Rashi comes along and says, and if you want to explain this pasuk simply, then this is the way you would explain it. Bereshis, in the beginning of when Hashem was creating the heaven and the earth, when the whole world was still toyu, vavoyu, and choshech, and before the world was created in a full, proper way, it was just the beginning of when Hashem was starting to create the world. Then vayomer elikim yehi oir, Hashem said there should be light, and the rest of creation, because the word Bereshis is always connected to the following words. What does Bereshis mean? Bereshis means in the beginning of, Bereshis bara elikim, in the beginning of the creation. This is what Hashem did. So the Rebbe asks as follows: if Bereshis bara, according to Rashi, the simple meaning is that it's referring to the creation of the heavens and the earth, in the beginning of when Hashem created heaven and earth, as Rashi said, that is kipshute, that is the simple pshat. Whereas the first pshat, Rashi himself says that's a drash, darshuni, that's a drasha, that's already something that we derive or we learn out of the pasuk. So the question is, why does Rashi need to b'chlal bring this explanation that's a drasha, that's not the simple pshat, saying that this refers to Torah, that refers to the Yidden, which, as we said before, Torah and the Yidden are really completely beyond the world, beyond creation, and precede the creation. And even if for some reason Rashi does have to bring this drasha, but l'cha'oira, seemingly Rashi should have first have brought the pirush that is the simple pshat of the pasuk, and only then would Rashi start bringing other drashas on the pasuk. Furthermore, regarding the whole way how Rashi starts his pirush on the Torah, on the words Bereshis bara, what does Rashi say in his first pirush, before even the ones that we just mentioned? Rashi says, Lo haya tzarich lahaschil es haTorah ela me'achodesh hazalachem. Rashi says, really, how should have the Torah started? Not with the story of creation, but with the first mitzvah that the Eibishter gives the Yidden, of achodesh hazalachem, how Rosh Chodesh Nisan is going to be the month, the first month for the Yidden, etc. Says Rashi, and why do we start with Bereshis? And Rashi then goes on to explain, as the Rebbe will get to this part of the Rashi a little bit later in the Sikha, where Rashi goes on to explain that this is all, that the Goyim shouldn't have their arguments about Eretz Yisrael and so on and so forth. So from what do we understand from all of this? That HaChodesh HaZalochem would have been a way of starting Torah with a matter of Torah and mitzvahs. But clearly the Torah is not starting with a matter of Torah and mitzvahs. Instead, it's starting with a matter of creation. And yet, what does Rashi do? Rashi starts his Pirushim on Bereshis, Davka explaining how Bereshis has to do with Torah and Yidden, as opposed to explaining the simple pshat of Bereshis, referring to the creation. Again, just let's clarify these questions. The last few questions that the Rebbe asked over here. In the word Bereshis itself, there are two different Pirushim. Either it refers to Torah and Yidden, or it refers to creation. The Rebbe is first of all trying to understand how we can understand these Pirushim together. If Torah and the Yidden and creation seem to be two complete opposites, Torah and the Yidden are completely higher than the world. The world is obviously much lower than these two. That's first of all. Second of all, in Rashi also brings these two Pirushim. Not only does Rashi bring these two Pirushim, but he first brings the Pirush of Torah v'Yisrael, and he says himself it's a drash, and only then does he explain Pshutei Shel Mikra, saying that it's referring to the world. So why does Rashi do it in that order? Why does he bring both Pirushim, or why does he do it in that order? Furthermore, Rashi himself says that the Torah doesn't start with a matter of Torah and mitzvahs. It focuses more on creation, rather than an inyan of Torah and mitzvahs. Doesn't start with HaChodesh HaZalochem. So if that's the case, surely Rashi should have started his Pirushim on Bereshis, first with the explanation that Bereshis refers to the world, and only then getting to the idea that it could refer also to Torah and Yidden. Says the Rebbe in Siv Gimel v'Yeshloimer Abir B'Zeh, we could say the explanation on all of this is as follows. From the wording of Chazal, that Bereshis is B'Shvil HaTorah Shenikras Reishis, for the Torah that's called Reishis, and for the Yidden that are called Reishis. In other words, we're speaking about what is the purpose of creation, Torah and Yidden. From that itself we understand that Torah, when we say that Torah and Yidden are Rashis, as the expression Machshavton Shal Yisrael, the thought about Yidden, comes to the Eibishter before everything else, we're not speaking about only how Yidden and Torah are completely removed or higher than the creation, because if that's the case, we shouldn't even call them Rashis. Rashis means something already a beginning that has to do with the creation. And that the creation has something to do with the Torah and the Yidden. Rather, mainly what we're speaking about over here is how Torah and the Yidden come down into the world, how they become a part of the world, how they become Rashis part and the beginning of the world itself. Says the Rebbe, as this itself could be understood from the word Rashis itself. What is the translation of the word Rashis? Like in the passage that we brought before regarding Yidden, that they are called Rashis Tvu Asoi. So Rashis is, as one originally, part of the Tvua, part of the grain, and then we separate it, we say this is the beginning, the first of it all. So it's not something completely removed, it's part of the thing itself. So therefore, when we're speaking about Yidden and Torah being Rashis of the world, we're not speaking about how they are completely removed from the world, but rather how they are part of the world itself. The Rebbe says we can understand this even more based on how something that the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, on the words we say in davening. In davening we say, in Avos Olam this is, Uvanu v'charta mikolam v'loshe, and we say to the Eibishter, you have chosen us from all people, from all languages, from all the nations of the world. So the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that Uvanu v'charta mikolam v'loshe refers to our materialistic body, which appears similar to the body of a goy. Why does Uvanu v'charta refer to our body? Because the whole idea of Bechira, of free choice, is only shayach when you have two things that are identical to each other, or similar to each other. That's when you could say you choose one over the other. Because two things that have absolutely no similarity to each other, no similar characteristics, or they are in two different places, on two different levels, then it wouldn't make sense to say the concept of Bechira, because then it simply depends what you want or where you are. So either you're interested in item number one, or you're in the place of item number one, or you're interested, or you yourself are in the place of item number two. So then it's sort of no choice. What's the whole idea of Bechira? Bechira means, free choice means you choose one over the other, not because of a certain logical reason, but it's dafka coming from your free choice. That's what you chose. If you're choosing it because of any sort of reason, because of any sort of quality, that's still not real Bechira. Real Bechira Chavshis, free choice, means that there's absolutely nothing forcing you or getting you to have to choose one over the other. It's just simply coming because of your free choice, because of your desire. And that is why real Bechira only makes sense regarding the guf of the Yid, which at the materialistic body seems similar to the body of the Umois Olam. That's when you could say that there's Bechira, because they're similar. If we speak about the Neshama of a Yid, you can't say the words Uvanu B'charta, because the Neshama of a Yid, which is a Chelik Alikami Ma'al Mamish, which is truly a part of Hashem, has absolutely no similarity to that of a Goy Lahavdil. And therefore, you can't say the word Bechira. It's not a choice of one over the other. So, to more generally speaking, if you speak about the way Yidden are completely removed and higher than the matters of the world, again, you wouldn't be able to say that the Yid is chosen over different inyanim of the world. Because, again, they're so different and apart from each other. It is Dafka, the guf of the Yid. And Dafka, as he is down here in this world amongst the nations. And he seems similar to the body of a Goy. That's when you could use the term Uvanu v'charta, that the Eibishter chose us. Or as in the Pasuk, that the Eibishter chose you to be his treasured nation. Mikol ha'amim. Here again, it's chosen from all the nations, or as in what we say in davening, Atav v'chartanu mikol ha'amim, because then you could say there's a choice, there's this certain similarity between the Yid and Lahavdil the Goy. Furthermore, says the Rebbe, in the wording of the Alter Rebbe says, Guf ha'chumri, the materialistic body, that seems in its materialism similar to the Guf or Umas Oilom. So here the Rebbe is medayik that it doesn't say the Guf ha'gashmi or hanidme begashmi yusay. It doesn't use the term the physical body and physicality, rather chumrius, materialistic, which is a much lower level. The Rebbe explains, the gashmi is the body of a yid is also different to the gashmi is the body of a goy, because a yid eats and drinks, of course, in a kosher way. This becomes part of his flesh and blood. So b'meila, his gashmi is the body is also on a more refined and a higher level. And therefore, even there you wouldn't be able to say true bechira, that the Eibishter chose that over the guf of a goy. Because once again, the guf of the yid is so different to the guf of the goy. It's dafka the materialistic aspect of the body, which in its materialism is similar to the guf of the goy, which materialism refers to the lowest aspect. The Rebbe explains in the square brackets over here that the idea of chumrius, that's related to the element of dust or earth, which is the lowest of the four elements. Everyone's stepping on it. And that's what we're saying. This dafka, this lowest aspect of the guf, the materialistic aspect of the guf, this is that we say is similar to the body of the goy. And that's dafka, where we say that the Eibishter chose us mikol am v'loshoin, the bechira of the Eibishter that's completely higher than logic, the materialistic body of the yid. And therefore the Rebbe says, it's not even shayach that the koichavim, the mazolois, all the different planets and the stars and the different heavenly bodies that are connected to the goyim should be able to ask any questions. What would have they been able to ask? That even the goyim are also creations of the Eibishter, like the Yidden. They too need to get their sustenance from the Eibishter, like all other creations, just like the Yidden. And in fact, we find that the Klippa itself and the Koiches of Klippa argued by the Yidden of Mitzrayim, leaving Mitzrayim. They said, Halalu of the Avodah Zarah, V'halalu of the Avodah Zarah. The Yidden were sinning just like the goyim were sinning. So if that's the case, why are they, the Yidden, different than all the goyim? But again, the answer is Uvanu v'chartam mikol am v'loshin. That's exactly the point. It is dafka where there is the similarity between them. That is where the Eibishter chose one over the other in a way that's completely beyond reason. From all of this, we understand that when we call the Yidden the Rashis of the Bria, the beginning of the creation, we're not only speaking about the neshama that's completely removed from the world, we're speaking also regarding the guf. And on the contrary, dafka, the physical and materialistic body of the Yid, which is similar to the materialistic body of the Goy. There's a certain maila over here, even over the maila of a Yid mitzad, coming from his neshama, or the other characteristics and the physical body as opposed to the materialistic body, because dafka in the materialistic body, the maila is that over here is where the Eibishter's bechira is. Here is when it was revealed that the Eibishter chose dafka, the body of the Yid. And as we said before, that this bechira is only referring to the physical or materialistic body of the Yid. And where does bechira come from? True free choice. Who has the true and ultimate free choice? That is dafka atzmus, who is the very, very essence of Hashem himself, who has no one that precedes him, no one that can force him in any way or get him to choose anything in any way. Dafka, he is the one that has the ultimate free choice. And therefore the expression of atzmus muhus and bechira chavshis, where is it expressed? Dafka in the most simple and materialistic aspect of the body of the Yid. Says the Rebbe V'yeshloimar that in a similar way, just like it is regarding the Yidden, which are the Rashis, the beginning, in a similar way we could also say something similar regarding Torah as well, which is the other Rashis. What is the ultimate and greatest aspect of Torah? Torah the way it is down here in this world. Torah the way, not it's up the way it's up in heaven, but dafka the way Torah comes down here and is dependent on the Beis Din and the Yid deciding the halacha and understanding the halacha. As the Alter Rebbe tells us in Tanya, Torah traveled down all the way into Gashmi matters, into physical matters of this world. That's what most of the mitzvahs of the Torah deal with, and that's what the halachas of the Torah deal with. Torah came down all the way into the physical letters that are ink on parchment. And Davka, as Torah is down here in this world, that's where it's Nizgala, the ultimate and greatest maila of Torah. And to use the expression of the piyut, of the poem that we say on Simchas Torah, So we say over there, Toiv Sachra Mikol Schoira, Mipazu Mipninim Yikara. It is more precious than any sort of more merchandise and more than the most precious gold and pearls and so on. In other words, as Torah is Dafke in a world of merchandise, a world of business, Dafke, here we see how Torah is the best merchandise, and how learning Torah is something that Dafka Goy is not allowed to learn. In other words, again, Shayach Dafka to the Yid, similar to what we said before, the Maila of the Chumri is the body of the Yid, Dafka the Yid, the way he's in his most materialistic state down here in this world. So in both of these areas we see the Maila of the Yid and the Maila of Torah, Dafka, the way they are down here in this world. However, the Rebbe says there's still a fundamental difference between Torah and the Yid. Torah, even as it traveled down here, it remains in its fullest and greatest holiness. However, the body of a Yid, Sof Kol Sof, it became a Nivra Gashmi, it became a created being and a very materialistic being. So that's on the one hand that Torah retains and keeps its spiritual dimension as it's down here in this world. But on the other hand, the concept of Uvanu V'charta, this free choice that we said before comes from the essence of Hashem, that is Davkin, the Gashmi, is the body of the Yid, which we said before, Machshavtan Shal Yisrael, the thought of the Yid, within the Eibishter's thought, Kvayachol, comes even before Torah, and therefore, even Torah is not a condition for the Eibishter choosing the body of the Yid. It is purely the Eibishter's choice in the materialistic body of the Yid himself. So just to summarize at least the main nekuda of what we've been learning so far, is that the Rebbe is explaining that originally we asked the question, Torah and the Yidden are completely removed, why are we even getting them involved with the word Bereshis, which is speaking about the creation of the world? So now at this point of the Sikha, the Rebbe is explaining that when we speak about Yidden and Torah being called Reishis, we're speaking about Yidden and Torah, how they have already some sort of connection to the world, they are down to earth. Says the Rebbe in Siv Dalet, based on all of this we can understand the Chidush, when Chazal tell us on the word Bereshis that it's B'shvilat Torah, that it's created for the Torah that is called Reishis, and for the Yidden that are called Reishis. The main Chidush over here is not that we're speaking about Torah and Yidden, how they are just beyond the world and how they are the best and the greatest and higher than the world on their own, completely removed from creation. What we're mainly speaking about is how the Torah and the Yidden are part of the creation. And as we said before, the materialistic body of the Yid. And Dafke here, even as it's part of the world, it's Nizgala, that yet they are the beginning and the best part of the creation, and how the whole creation was created Dafke for them. And this is the way we can now understand the connection between the two Pirushim and the word Bereshis. On the one hand, saying that it's referring to the beginning of the creation. On the other hand, we're saying that it's referring to Torah and the Yidden, which are higher than creation. So the Rebbe explains that this idea that Torah and Yisrael are higher than creation, but this now becomes part of creation itself. This is, in other words, the Torah and the Yidden as they're becoming part of creation. Since the Torah and the Yidden are becoming part of the world, Bereshis bara l'kim es hashamayim v'sa'aretz, in the simple meaning of the word, that the Eibishter created a world now, the Shamayim v'aretz, and the Eibishter created the Gashmis, the body of the Yid, which seems similar to the body of the Goy, and in fact, without the Eibishter's choice, there would seem to be no difference between them. This is the Chiddush, the Dafke, and this Darge itself, it's Nizgala, it's recognizable in the whole world, that the Yidden and the Torah are still the best, the first, the highest, and the greatest. And for them, the whole world was created. And now we can understand why Rashi brings the Pirush, the Drash, about Torah and the Yidden first. Because not only it's not a contradiction to the simple shot, which is referring to the world, Bereshis bara meaning, referring to the world, but just the opposite, Adra. Davke in this is expressed the shleimus of the world itself. And Davke, this reveals the whole point of why the world is here. That is, that the whole world, the whole creation, es hashamayim v'sa'aretz, why is it all here? It is all to be megala. It is all to reveal the special maila of the Yid, that the Eibishter chose the Yid, and the special maila of Torah. and that it should be felt in the world in the most simple sense of the word. It should be felt, mamish, within the world, the special mile of Torah and Yidden, how they are the best, the highest, and the greatest compared to everything else. Says the Rebbe, we could connect this also with the end of Parshas Bereshis. We know the concept of Noatz, Tchilas, and Besoifen, and Tchilas, and the beginning and the end always have a very, very strong connection. How does Parshas Bereshis finish? For Noach Motzachein Beinei Hashem, Noach found favor in the eyes of Hashem. What is the idea of Motzachein Beinei Hashem? Found favor. This is again an Indian that is higher than logic. It's not something, a logical thing. Motzachein, found favor. This is similar to the idea of Bechira. In other words, someone finds grace. So it's not a matter of a logical explanation, but it's something higher than explanation. Based on what's known, says the Rebbe, that on Rosh Hashanah, when we are speaking the psukim of Zichroinos, so we also mention the pasuk about Noach. The pasuk says, "V'games Noach be'ahava zacharto." So it's explained in Chassidus that the reason we mention this pasuk is because here we are speaking about the Maila of Neshamois Yisrael in a way that's higher than Tam Vadas. In other words, this pasuk speaking about Noach is speaking about mainly the way it's referring to Noach's connection to what's going to be Am Yisrael and the Eibishter's choice of Am Yisrael in a way that's higher than logic. So the Rebbe, based on this, we could say that the connection to the beginning of the Parsha, to Bereshis, since we said Bereshis means for the Yidden that are called Reshis, and we said that the whole idea is that it's also Nizgala in the world itself recognizes this. That's the pshat of the end of the Parsha, V'noyach motzachein be'einei Hashem, that down here in this world, the Eibishter saves Noach from the Mabul. And in fact, this leads then on to what says in the next Parsha, Eile toildis Noach, it says twice Noach, representing that he was a special nachas le'elyonim, both in the upper worlds as well as in the lower worlds. In other words, that even down here in this lowest world, in the gashmis, in the physical and materialistic aspect of the world, comes the idea of the Noach, the special nachas, the special pleasure that Noach brings into the world. So therefore, just like in the beginning of the Parsha, what we were saying is that Bereshis means that the Maila, the special Maila of the Yid, also comes down, not only remaining higher than the world, but coming down into the world. In a similar way, in the end of the Parsha, the whole idea of a Noach Motzachein Be'einei Hashem is also this idea of bringing the special nachas that Noach had in course of the Eibishter, also bringing it down into the physical and materialistic world. Says the Rebbe in Seif Hey. With all of this, we can now understand also the connection to what Rashi starts off in Parshas Bereshis. His first statement is, that the Torah should have started simply with the first mitzvah to Yidden HaChodesh HaZelochem. Why is it that the Torah starts with Bereshis? So Rashi says, brings a pasuk, Koyach Maisav Higid La'amoi, that the Eibishter is telling us the might and power of his actions, of his deeds. Why is that the Eibishter is telling us about his deeds of creation of the world? Losas lem nachlas goyim. It's ultimately for the purpose of giving us the land of where the goyim claimed to have some rights to it. That is, if the goyim are going to come along and say to the Yidden, listim atem, that you robbed us because you conquered the land of the seven nations, the Yidden respond, the whole world belongs to the Eibishter. He created it. He gives it to whoever he sees fit. So the Eibishter originally gave it to the Goyim for a certain time period, and with his own desire he takes it from them and gives it to us. What's the Chiddush over here? What's the point Rashi is making? So here we're speaking about not the way Torah and Yidden are removed or higher than the world. That would have been understood if we started with the words HaChodesh HaZelochem. So we would have been looking at a mitzvah that's given dafka to the Yidden that is no shaychus to the world and to Goyim. Here the idea Rashi is telling us is that you have Yidden the way they are in a physical world, in a materialistic world, together with Goyim. And the Eibishter created Borei Elikim, all of them equally as far as the materialistic aspect is concerned. As Rashi says the words, Kol ha'aretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all equally the Eibishter's. The Eibishter created it all. So there is room, we're living in a world where there's room for the argument of the Goyim that you robbed and you took the land from us and so on. At the same time, what's being Nizgala? What's Rashi telling us? In this world, with the world of Goyim, it's being Nizgala that the Eibishter is the one that gave it to them. The Eibishter is the one that took it from them. Because Ata v'Chartonim Mikolamim, the Eibishter chose us from all the nations. And Koyach Maisav Higid La'amoy Losas Lem Nachlas Goyim. Because just like the Eibishter chose the Yidden, he also chose to give us Eretz Yisrael, the chosen land, chosen from all other lands, to his chosen nation. Says Rebbe Ula Hoysif. And to add another point, that by the fact that the Eibishter gave us this physical land, Eretz Yisrael Hagashmius, with his own desire and in his own free choice, this is where you see even more the expression of the Eibishter's Bchira in Am Yisrael, as Yidden are down here in this physical world. We see where the Eibishter chooses them and gives them specifically the land of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, again, just in summary, the last point, this Rashi is also coming to emphasize this idea that the special Bechira of Am Yisrael, of what we're looking at in the beginning of Bereshis, is not only speaking about the way Yidden are removed from the world and removed from Goyim, but how it's noticeable also Dafka in a physical, material world together with Goyim. Says the Rebbe, we could connect all of this also with the Hemshech HaParshis, with the continuation of what happens in the further Parshis. After Parshas Bereshis and Parshas Noach, which we just spoke already about before, comes Parshas Lech Lecha. In Parshas Lech Lecha, we speak about how the Eibishter tells Avraham Avinu, Lech Lecha me'artzecha me'latcha, go from your land, from your birthplace, from your father's house, elo aretz asher areka, to the land that I am going to show you. That is, that even though Avraham is found in a Gashmi-izdika, Chumri-izdika world, he's found in a physical, materialistic place. Artzecha me'latcha me'beis avicha, the place of his father, etc. The Eibishter tells him, go away from there. Remove yourself. Go to the land that I'm going to show you. And of course, the Eibishter gives him the land of Eretz Yisrael. First of all, the land of 7 nations, as well as the additional 3 of Keni, Knizi, V'Kadmoini. He promises him as an eternal inheritance for Bnei Yisrael. The pasuk over there says, Elo Oretz Asher Areka. Simply Asher Areka means the land that I'm going to show you. But Chassidus also says, Areka means I'm going to show, or I'm going to reveal your own darga, Avraham Avinu's own darga. In other words, Avraham Avinu himself is going to come to much greater levels, completely beyond where he ever was before. And this is that by him doing his avodah, the Eibishter is Megala, the real Metzias of what Avraham Avinu is, the real Metzias of what every single Yid is, excuse me, who he is and what he is. The Rebbe says in Seivov, based on all of this, we could also understand the special Maila of Shabbos Bereshis. The Shabbos where we read the whole of Parshas Bereshis, and as we said before, as you set yourself up on Shabbos Bereshis, that is the way it's going to continue for the rest of the year. And the Rebbe explains, these two ideas of Bnei Yisrael, how they are on their own completely higher than the world. That's Mitzad Neshama. And then you have the way they are in this physical world. And the Eibishter chose them, as we explained before, that that's more to do with the Guf. So generally we could say this is also expressed in the 2 time frames within the year. Chodesh Tishrei versus the rest of the year. Chodesh Tishrei, which is a month full of Yomim Tovim, is mainly expressing and revealing the idea how Yidden are higher than the world. Especially days like Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, the end of the Yomim Tovim, whereas the expression is Yiyul L'chol Levadcha Ve'ein L'zorim Itoch, or Dvar Malchus Brashis, it's the days that it's just the Eibishter and the Yidden alone. We see clearly how the Yidden are rejoicing with the Torah. The Yidden are completely higher than everything else. So that's Chodesh Tishrei, that's more the Neshama aspect of a Yid. On the other hand, you have the rest of the months of the year, where here's the Avodah, where the way a Yid is much more already connected and involved with the world. Comes along Shabbos Bereshis, which is the end of Chodesh Tishrei, and the beginning of the months of the rest of the year. As we said before, it's also Shabbos Mavorchim Cheshvan, and we say here you have both ideas coming together. On the one hand, you have the Milo of Torah and Yidden, how they are Reishis, but Reishis completely on their own, higher than the world, removed from the world. But we also have the level of Bereshis, as we said, Reishis as it's already a beginning of the world. Therefore, on Parshas Bereshis, we get the koyach that even before we go out of Chodesh Tishrei to start doing our avodah in the world, every Yid with his private shlichus in his daily life, what do? We read in the Torah Bereshis Bara Lekim Es Hashamayim V'Saaretz, And as we said, Bereshis means that the Eibishter created the world for the Torah, which is called Reishis, and for the Yidden that are called Reishis. This itself gives the koyach that as we set ourselves up on Shabbos Bereshis, that's the way it will continue for the rest of the year. That even as we're involved in the uvdan, the chayil, and the mundane things of Gashmis and Chumri Yisraelim, the physical and materialistic aspects of the world, it will always be felt the mile of Bnei Yisrael, that we are the chosen nation. That Atav v'chartanu mikol ha'amim. Again, just to summarize the last few points, is that the Rebbe is saying that the whole idea is that on the one hand we have the Yidden the way they're completely higher than the world, and that is specifically emphasized in Chodesh Tishrei, and that is the darga of the way Yidden are called Reishis, but the kind of Reishis that's removed from the world. We then have the idea of Bereshis, the way Yidden are more connected with the world, with Bereshis also having the other meaning, simply creation of the world. So this is the way Yidden are connected with the world, and yet even within the world it's noticeable that Atav v'chartanu mikol ha'amim, that the Eibishter chose us over all the nations. The special mile of the Yid expressing itself even in the physical world, and reading Parshas Bereshis at this time of the year, the end of Chodesh Tishrei, going into Chodesh Cheshvan, gives us the koyach to go into the rest of the year with the same koyach and with the same attitude, recognizing that we're higher than the world, and it's all about impacting the world itself. So what does this all mean practically? Says the Rebbe in Siv Zayin, according to all of this, that Ma'ila of Bnei Yisrael, as the chosen nation, comes begili, comes in a revealed way. And Adarab, Dafka as they are in this physical world, in this materialistic world. So there's a Nafke Mina B'Poyel, there's a very, very fundamental inyan of how a Yid has to be doing his Avodah, especially in the time of Golus. Since the whole world is created B'Shvil Yisrael, for the sake of the Yid, and that expresses itself even in this physical materialistic world by the fact of Uvanu V'Charta, as we said before, refers to the materialistic body of the Yid, which seems similar to the body of the Yisraelim, of the Goy. So it's understood that in any given situation, in every single time and in every single place, even the most materialistic situation, even in the time of Golus, so a Yid is always in the Darga of Reishis, higher than all other Inyanim. And Adarabah, everything else is created for them, because they are the chosen nation. The Eibishter chose them, and in this Bechira, that can't even be changed. If the whole mile of the Yid as Reishis would only be as far as his Neshama is concerned, and in the special qualities that his Nefesh or his Guf has over the Goy, then you may say that that's only in a certain situation or in a condition where the Neshama is shining in a revealed way, but not in a state when there's a concealment over the Neshama. For example, in the time of Golus. But since we just said Uvanu v'charta mikolam v'loshen refers to the materialistic body which is similar to the body of the Yisraelim, in other words, even in its lowliest state, so this Bechira exists all times. So from all of this we understand that even when a Yid is in Golus, under the various different nations and governments, so nevertheless, even in a situation where we don't see Begilui, how the Neshama is on this level of Reishis, we need to understand that the Guf, even the Gashmi, is the Guf of the Yid, is still always on the level of Reishis, because the Eibishter chose the Guf of the Yid. And therefore it's understood that not only are Yidden never under the Shalita, under the rulership of the Goyim Chas v'Shalom, and this is true even as far as not only as far as the Neshama is concerned, but even as far as the Guf is concerned. Says the Rebbe, not only that, but Adarabah, even in the time of Galus, they are always considered Reishis, the beginning and the top and the head of the creation, and it is for them that all the Goyim were created and all other parts of the world. And in fact, the greatness of the Goyim itself is dependent on the Yidden. As Chazal actually tell us that in every single generation and in every single time, the nation under whom the Yidden are in Golus ends up the ones being higher and greater than all other nations. And even though while Yidden are in Golus there's a concept of Shibud Malchus, that we are under a specific government, and there is a command, we are told that Dina de Malchus Dina, there is a halacha that we need to listen to the laws of the government, and we're not allowed to rebel against the nations that we are under, and Altas Gara B'Goyim, we shouldn't start up with them, and other sort of things like that. Says the Rebbe, the reason for all of that is not because a Yid has any sort of fear of the Goyim, in the time of Golus Chas v'Shalom, because on the contrary, as we said before, Yidden are the Reishis, all of the Goyim are created for them. The Pshat is, it's similar to what the Pasuk says, Al Totzar es Moyav, Val Tizgar b'Mulchama. You shouldn't start up with Moyav, don't make fights with them, and so on and so forth, and so too regarding Amoin, that it's not as if it's some good advice that because Yidden need to fear them, because they have power and strength, because Yidden might need them, so that's why we shouldn't start up with them. Rather, all of this is only because what the Pasuk says. The reason you shouldn't start up with them is because the Eibusha says, I'm not going to give you their lands because I had already given it to the children of Lot. In other words, what the Pasuk is saying is because this is the way the Eibusha made the Seder. Just like we said before, the Eibusha gave Eretz Yisrael originally to the Goyim, and he decided to take away from them. And in a similar way, there's certain parts the Eibusha gave to Ammon and Moav and not to the Yidden, and therefore we don't start up with them. So it's not the Pshat because in essence we have some sort of fear, rather because this is the Seder that the Eibusha made of what we're supposed to be doing. In a similar way, when we say the word Altas Garabum, we don't start up with the Goyim, or Dina de Malchus Dina, or that laws of the government are considered halacha. It's again not because we are afraid of them, Chas v'Shalom, because rather the Eibusha set up and commanded that that's the Seder the way it needs to be in Golus. However, it's understood that that in no way impacts the idea that Yidden are even in the Zman HaGolus, the Am HaNivchor, and they are the Reishis, they can remain the beginning and the head of the whole world and of all the Goyim. In other words, that in addition to the fact that Dina de Malchus Dina, even that is only regarding certain inyanim, certain gashmizdika things, like monetary things, certain taxes, and other things like that, but not regarding matters of Torah and mitzvahs, in which there's a clear hayra in the Torah. And to use the expression of Kvoit Kedushas Meiri V'chami Admor, that only our neshamis, only our gufim went to Golus, but our neshamis never were chased into Golus and were never given into Shibud Malchus. But really, even regarding the Gashmi is the guf of the Yid, and even the Chumriyas of the Yid, even that always remains Reishis, higher, stronger, greater than Umas Oilo. And again, the fact that we have to listen to the government is not because we are inherently under the government, but rather that's the Seder, the way the Eibusha set it up. As we said before, because the Eibusha sent us in the Golus, there's a certain Seder, a certain order by which we have to live. So from this we understand that all the kindness that the Yidden get from Chassidim Yisrael, from the righteous Gentiles in the time of Golus, and that because of that, of course, we need to thank them. As the Pasuk says, "V'darshu shloim oir," you have to seek the peace of the city that you're living in, and with their peace, you're going to have peace. So it's again not Chas v'Shalom because the Yidden need the Chesed of the Goyim. Adarabah, we say Chesed l'umim chatos, and when Yidden are receiving the Chesed of that are coming from the Goyim for matters of Torah and mitzvahs, we need to understand that it's not the pshat that it's really the Chesed of the Goyim. Instead, it's the Chesed of the Eibusha. The Eibusha is giving us through the Goyim, because that's the way the Eibusha wanted the Seder should be these days, and therefore, even though we say usually Chesed L'umim Chatos, that's only referring to a kindness that's coming from the Goy by himself, but this kindness is coming from the Eibusha through the Goyim. Says the Rebbe in Sivches, Ula Hoysef, that all of these ideas of what we're speaking about in Shabbos Bereshis is especially emphasized and even more revealed in this year, Tafshinun Beis, which Yidden give the Rosh Hashanah as Hoyete Shnas Neflois Ba, a year of miracles filling it, and Neflois Ba Koil Mikol Koil, miracles and wonders in all aspects. Explains the Rebbe, the word Neflois could also be taken as Nun Plois. What does Nun Plois mean? 50 levels of plois or of wonder. That's an expression of shleimus, of perfection within the concept of Pella. Because even one time is already also wonder means something that's completely wondrous and beyond all other inyanim. When we say Nun Plois, so that's a level of Nun is a level that's completely way and beyond, and a shleimus within the concept of Pella. And the Rebbe says the idea of Nun, 50, as we know, is like 50 is usually Yovel, so 50 is a concept of eternity, in other words, an absolute perfection in the inyan of wonders. And what is the idea of Hoyer to Hey Shnas Neflois Bo? This is hinting to the fact that in addition to the previous year, which was Shnas Arenu Neflois, which surely there was many Neflois, and now we're holding an Inyan of Ma'ilin B'Kodesh, increasing even more to that. So now there's an additional thing that this year will be Neflois Bo in a permanent way, in a full way, Neflois Bo. That means that these wonders become not only another detail of the year, but that becomes the whole idea, the whole Inyan of the year, and Neflois B'Koil in all aspects. Says the Rebbe via Shloimar that this, the gilui of this concept of Neflois Bo, that means Neflois wonders that are completely beyond and removed, are expressed begilui in this concept that we were speaking about before, the fact that the Eibishter chose the Yidden. The idea of Bechira, as we said, is this level that is completely higher than all qualities and all logical explanations. It's a level of Neflois. The Rebbe says we've already started seeing in the beginning of this year, in continuation to the wonders of the previous year, we started seeing wonders, specifically in connection to the idea that that country, Russia, is freeing thousands upon thousands of Yidden and helping thousands upon thousands of Yidden to go up to Eretz Yisrael and to other places where they could live completely freely in their private lives. And that is again the idea of being Megala, the special Maila of the Yid, in a way that even the Goyim are recognizing this and helping out in this. In order to explain this, the Rebbe prefaces by first saying that this idea that the whole world and that Goyim recognize the Yidden and the Maila of the Yidden, this is something that's getting stronger from generation to generation. The closer we are getting to the Geula HaMitzvah Dvar Shlema, at which point will be fulfilled the promise of a whole Goyim loyalty, that the Goyim are going to go by the light of the Yidden, and V'hoyu Melachim Oimnayach V'Sorisayim and Ikisayach, where Goyim are going to help out the Yidden, etc., etc. So as a preparation to this, so over a number of generations, even in the time of Golus, we could see already that even Goyim are recognizing that the Yidden are the chosen nation. And as we could see this in a number of Medrashi Chazal, the Rebbe brings for an example a story in Gemara Zvachim where there was a Goyish king that actually went and helped a Yid be dressed in a more proper and beautiful way. As the Pasuk says, L'chavidu l'sefares, should be dressed in a more proper way. And he said, I want to fulfill the pasuk that says, V'hoyu Melachim Emnayach, where the Goyish kings are going to help out the Yidden, and other similar examples. As it's known that there was even amongst Goyim that they called to the Yidden, whichever language the Goyim spoke, even when they're speaking about themselves, spoke about the Yidden as the chosen nation. Says the Rebbe, but specifically in the recent generations, this became even more so. Specifically, the Rebbe says here in America, and in other countries, which is a Medina Shel Chesed, a Medina of kindness, which is allowing Yidden to do their avodah in a way of menuchas hanefesh and menuchas haguf, in a way that they could completely do it in a relaxed way and in a comfortable way. And in fact, the government itself helps the Yidden to be able to fulfill Torah and mitzvahs, helps the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, etc. And within this itself, the Rebbe says even more so. In the most recent years, and especially in the last year of Shnas Arenu Neflois, in the beginning of this year, the year of Neflois Bo, there came also the idea of Russia allowing more and more Yidden being able to go up to Eretz Yisrael, as we said before. And the Rebbe says that the path to all of this was paved specifically through the G'dolei Yisrael. Over the generations, the things that they have worked along with the Goyim, and specifically Rabbi Yisrael Nesienu, specifically our Rabbeim, starting with the Alter Rebbe, that was involved in all matters of the world, as it's known, the special ishtadlus, the special effort that the Alter Rebbe had put in, that Alexander should win over Napoleon, and that he said was going to be for the benefit of the Yidden, Beruchnius. And the Rebbe says, via Shloimar, that now it turned out that this was ultimately also for the benefit of the Yidden, also Begashmias, that eventually this turned out for the benefit of the Yidden Begashmias, by now that country itself helping the Yidden to be able to go out of Russia, etc. Says the Rebbe v'yehi ratzon, that this should continue going more and more in the way of Moiseh v'hoilech v'oir, that all the limitations of giving kindness to the Yidden, so all of those limitations should be taken away, that all the Goyim should recognize the mile of the Yidden, and that the Yidden are the true owners of Eretz Yisrael, and that all Yidden, every single Yid, even these days, has a portion in Eretz Yisrael. In accordance to the words of Rashi in the beginning of this week's parsha, Koyach Ma'asav Higid La'amoy, Losas Lem Nachlas Goyim, that the Eibishter notified the power and the greatness of his deeds to the Yidden, to give, in order to give them the inheritance of the Goyim, as we said before, that if the Goyim are going to say to the Yidden that you are robbers, that you conquer the land of the seven nations, the Yidden respond that the whole world belongs to the Eibishter. He created it and he gave it to whoever he sees fit. In his will he gave it to them originally. With his own will he took it away from them and gave it to us. And the Rebbe says, as this was recognized these very days in a meeting amongst Goyim, that Eretz Yisrael, and especially Chevron, all belongs to the Yidden, as it says in the Torah, or as they call it in the Bible, that even they consider it as a holy sefer. Says the Rebbe in Siftas, from all of this we understand simply how obvious it is, and that's completely not shaykh the whole idea of a certain announcement that was publicized recently that Chas v'Sholem Yidden need to give in to the pressures of Goyim regarding Eretz Yisrael. So some people were saying that this is a concept of Altas Gora, Ba'umois don't start up with a Goyim, because since the Yidden are under the rulership of the Goyim and dependent on their kindness, and that Chas v'Sholem, the Yidden's existence, and the fact that the Yidden were saved, and the fact that they could exist in Eretz Yisrael is Chas v'Sholem dependent on the Goyim, says the Rebbe, Rachmanu litzlan hoyol isiyah. Such a thing, of course, it cannot be at all. And the Rebbe explains why. First of all, the Rebbe says, Rachmanu litzlan, to say that the existence of any Yid is besofik, Rachmanu litzlan hoyol isiyah, as if it's Chas v'Sholem possible to say that any Yid could Chas v'Sholem not exist. Because as we know that Am Yisrael Yidden are eternal, because they are the Eibishter's nation, and the Eibishter is eternal. And as the Pasuk says, Ani Hashem lo shanisi, I Hashem have not changed, and you the Yidden have Chas v'Sholem never been finished off. And many other psukim that bring out this sort of idea. Number two, every single Yid knows simply what the beginning of the whole Torah is. The beginning of the whole Torah is Bereshis. As Rashi explains, that all of the world is created for the Torah, that's called Reshis, and for the Yidden that are called Reshis. So if that's the case, it's understood simply that Yidden cannot Chas v'Sholem be the Balabatim, boss, over the Yidden Rachmanu litzlan. And since this is the beginning of the whole Torah, both Torah Shebiksav as well as Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is of course the pirush, the explanation, the interpretation of Torah Shebiksav, and was given together with Torah Shebiksav, which of course includes everything that a Talmud Vasek, that any proper Talmud will ever be Mechadash. So this is the Torah that was learned and everything that was added by Yidden over the generations. So it's understood that the concept of Bereshis, and as Chazal explained it, that it's for the Torah and for the Yidden, this is a Yesoid in the whole Torah. And the Rebbe says that this can be understood simply. And with a Kal V'chomer, if we say regarding all in Yonam of Torah, that the order of Torah is part of Torah and it's completely accurate, how much more so the Bereshis, the beginning part of Torah, which we know that the beginning of anything, even as people speak, is completely accurate, so how much more so in Torah. So there's no question about it that this is the beginning and the foundation of Torah, that all of the world is created for the Torah and for Yidden. If that's the case, says the Rebbe, despite all of this, you have a Yid that gets up there and publicly announces in front of many, many Yidden that came to hear Torah, as if Chas v'Sholem, the existence of the Yidden, is dependent on Goyim. How could such a thing be? And the Rebbe says that wonder is even stronger, that we're coming now from the Yom Tovim of Chodesh Tishrei, when Yidden said so many times in their davening, Ata v'chartanu mikol ha'amim. And the Rebbe says this is something that's so obvious and so simple that no one even ever dreamed that this is something that needs to be clarified, and especially to be clarified to a Yid. Even Goyim recognize that Yidden are the chosen nation. And for a number of generations, this was the most obvious thing. And even in the generations where there were certain alamas v'estadim, certain concealments or certain problems, as in the times of the maskilim, etc., yet a Rav that has smicha would have never gotten up and made such an announcement. A further point, says the Rebbe, the whole argument of altas gara b'umois, don't start up with the nations, and about the kindness that we get from the nations, has absolutely no relevance to this whole topic. Because, as we said before, it's obvious the idea of don't start up with the nations has nothing to do, chaz v'sholem, with the fact that the whole world was created for the Yidden, and Ata v'chartonu, and as we explained before, we don't start up with the nations because that itself is one of the things that the Eibishter told us to do. But it's not chas v'sholem as if they're in any way better, greater, or more powerful than us. V'oid v'ikar, says the Rebbe, and a further, a more main point, it's understood simply that in matters of Torah and mitzvahs, there completely does not apply this whole idea of not starting up with a goyim. So how much more so in this case, when we're speaking about pikuach nefashos, saving of lives, which has to do with not giving back portions of Eretz Yisrael, by chas v'sholem giving back that could chas v'sholem endanger lives. As the Psak Din in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Siman Shin Chavtes, as we mentioned many times, that if goyim come and put a siege over Yiddish cities, if they're coming for life-threatening matters, and even if they didn't actually come yet, but they're only on the way to come, then the halacha is we go out, even on Shabbos, we go out with weapons. And if it's a city that's near a border, then even if they're not coming for life-threatening situations, they're not coming clear war, they're only coming for monetary matters of straw and hay, etc., even then you'd be mechalel Shabbos, so that chas v'sholem, the city shouldn't be conquered, and then allow other parts of the land to be conquered. Concludes the Rebbe v'yirotzen, that this individual that said these kind of words should take these words back. Even David HaMelech said, Shgiyois mi yovim, that people can make mistakes. How much more so that the mistake shouldn't be made bigger by starting to try to explain it and giving various different interpretations and explanations for what the individual said, which would be opposite of the truth. Especially the Rebbe says that it won't help anyways, it will only make things worse, because we know a concept of emes meretz titzmach, ultimately the truth always comes out. V'ikar, says the Rebbe, the most important thing is that we shouldn't even have to speak and negate these sorts of things, because from now on, people should only be speaking about the praise and the mila of each and every Yid, and especially by being moisef, adding and learning Torah, fulfilling of mitzvahs, including especially the shiurim of chitas, which chitas is Rosh Tevis, of course, of Chumash, Tilim, and Tanya, and it's customary to specifically mention about this in this time when we're starting to learn Torah again from the beginning on Simchas Torah. That the whole world, including all the goyim, should recognize even more the special mila, the special quality and praise of the Yidden, that Bereshis B'Shvil Yisrael, that it's all created for the Yidden, and that Eretz Yisrael belongs to Am Yisrael, and that the ultimate gili of this, of course, will be B'Gula Mitzvah Shleima, when in addition to the 7 lands, we're also going to have the additional 3 of Keni, Knizi, V'Kadmoini, and that take it from Yad Mamash, on Shabbos Bereshis of the year Hoyatei Shnas Neflois Bo, the time of revelations of Neflois of the Eibishter, until the ultimate wonders of Kemetzeis Chomeretz Mitzrayim Arenu Neflois will all be revealed B'Gula Mitzvah Shleima, the Mashiach Tzedkenu. We'll go immediately, as the next parsha starts, Eile Toildos Noyach, which, as we said before, means Nachas, both in the upper worlds and in the lower worlds. And then moving on, as it says in the beginning of Lech Lecha, Me'artzchom, Me'ladchom, Be'savicha, La'aretz Asher Areka, referring to the idea of Avram Avinu going to Eretz Yisrael, so to all of the Yidden, including all of those that are in the meantime in Chutz La'aretz, including the fathers of Chassidus Chabad, the Alter Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, which are in Artzecha, Me'ladetecha, Me'beis Avicha, their land and place of birth and the place where they were, which the place of their Oiholim are, and their Tzion is in Hadich and Nezhin and Lubavitch, along with all of the Rabbi Seinu Nesienu and all the Tzaddikim and all the Yidden of all the generations, all go to our holy land, to Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh, Tahara Kodesh, and Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, B'Kodesh HaKadoshim, and all of this, take it from Miyad Mamash. I'd like to finish off wishing everyone a very, very good Yom Tov and Mashiach now.